What even is the point of Lawbringer? In its time, this was the warrior with the best equipment in the game. At least, that was the idea. His armor was so good that he wore chains on it so that his enemies wouldn't steal it, and then figure out the technology behind it. This was, of course, before heroes like Warmonger came to play, and later on, even Virtuosa. And his weapon, the poleaxe, the game claims it's the most
versatile weapon ever invented.
Which, by the way, is not true. The longsword is the most versatile weapon of all time because it's something that you can actually carry around to places more easily. You can get it inside of buildings and on your day-to-day life, and is incredibly fast and really good at dealing with both unarmored and armored enemies alike. And when you flip a longsword, what do you get? A crappy poleaxe. So even though when you have sword, it's not going to be as good as a real poleaxe, a longsword can simply do more things, which objectively makes it more versatile. But let's ignore that and say that, well, talking strictly about combat and actual war setting, the poleaxe is better since having more range is oh so valuable. But still, when you hear these two things, best heavy armor in the game, and most versatile weapon of all time, what do you think of? I think a character that has a moveset that facilitates dealing with both groups of enemies, keeping them at bay with your range, and maybe when you're fighting one-on-one, the Lawbringer can also switch grips into a more defensive grappling stance, which is then backed up by tons of hyper armor thanks to, let's say it, the heaviest and most advanced armor in the game. Yet for some reason, on year 1 they decided that Lawbringer would be a parry specialist, with no hyper armor to speak of and an overly defensive playstyle. That's right, you know the shield guy or the lady with 2 blades? Let's not make those guys parry specialists, no, let's have the poleaxe guy, Bro, I can't be the only one that thinks this is ridiculous. And just look at his unique feats. Extremely creative, right? Now, Lawbringer isn't like that anymore for the most part, but he's not in a good place either if we're talking identity. Nowadays, it's more like he has a bunch of random abilities like shove, hyper armor heavy here, and unblockable there, and then really strong parries, like this is not it. Granted, he's in the best spot he's ever been for being healthy for the game while still being powerful, but he's still not a well-designed character conceptually. Like, riddle me this. Why does his first heavy have no properties, his second heavy has instant hyper armor, and his third heavy is unblockable? What's the logic here? These are the same type of attack. How come their properties are so different? So we all know where this is leading to. Slanderous. How would you change Lawbringer? Well, first off, I wouldn't. It's too late. The hero that he should have been from the beginning is so different to what he is now that you might as well just make a new character. But if I had to, I'll give you an idea. To reinforce the versatility aspect, we begin by giving him 2 stances. And no, I'm not doing this because I'm the biggest Highlander glazer on the planet. I'm giving him this because that's literally how the weapon is used in real life. One where he grabs the weapon by the middle, which would be his defensive mode, and could be the stance you use for your long-range poking attacks. Basically, this is your safe mode where you can block, deal medium damage, do things like shove, and have access to some fast poking attacks that keep the enemy on their toes, even at long range. And secondly, the stance where he grips the shaft by the end, making him unable to block, but giving him access to some really powerful, high damage offensive abilities. We're talking unblockables, enhanced slides, and big AoE attacks that would be really useful in teamfights. And of course, thanks to his high level armor, all his heavy attacks would have hyper armor as well. Of course, the ones in defensive mode would have less, since he is less committed to attacking, and the ones in offensive mode would have more, since the entire weight of the poleaxe is backing him up, and realistically there's no stopping that kind of attack. And while we're on the topic of moveset, this is a bit out of the scope for this video, but I already have one of those hero concepts on my mind of a poleaxe master with tons of abilities that utilize all the parts of a poleaxe, using all the range of motion and all that. Very complex, you know the drill. Videos like that take a lot of time since it requires me to mocap all the moves, but if you're interested, then be sure to let me know. If we're talking feats though, instead of this, how about we give him passives like Steel Plate Armor. All projectiles deal 80% less damage because they literally bounce off the steel plate. Or Hidden Dagger, where on a guard break, you activate this feat and it goes on cooldown, but the Lawbringer pulls out one of those thin daggers you see on knight versus knight fights and he stabs the enemy through the gaps and deals a lot of damage because he's grappling, and again, that's what they do in real life. When you say heavy armor poleaxe hero, that's what I think of. That's my vision, but if you see something different, then be sure to let me know. That's gonna be it. I just wanted to do a little rant since it's been a while, but that's it. See ya.